Okay, I'll get started this morning by just welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone joining us online as well. Sawadee Kap, Sawadee Kap. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the original words of the Buddha in more of a study group fashion. We start with meditation, but then we move into this Pali Canon and English study group. I'll explain to you guys what that is when we get to it. We start with meditation in order to help you train your mind, because everything that the Buddha taught is all about training your mind. There isn't any beliefs in the teachings of the Buddha. There aren't any rules or commandments or anything like this. He's helping you to understand the world around you through awakening to the wisdom of what's referred to as the natural laws of existence. Today, as part of our Pali Canon and English study group, we're going to be studying volume 6, which is titled The Natural Law of Kamma. This is the main natural law that you're awakening to in your journey to enlightenment, where you can understand this cause and effect, or this action and result. When you're making wise decisions or unwise decisions, this is leading to either wholesome results or wholesome karma, or unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. So I'm going to guide you in a meditation session, and then we'll get into understanding the Pali Canon and English study group and helping you guys to understand some of the teachings of the Buddha. If you would like to join with meditation, we start with chanting. We have the chants on laminated sheets over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself to get one, because we're going to be easing into the meditation with the chanting. We chant in the Pali language because this is the historical language of the teachings of the Buddha, but you'll see on those sheets there's English translations as well. Whenever we're chanting nowadays, it's to help us ease our mind into meditation and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, because everything that he taught was oral. So they needed a way to remember the teachings. They didn't have the technology to write things down because it didn't exist in that region of the world. So every 2 weeks they would come together and they would recite his teachings verbally in order to commit them to memory. So because of that, you can see that these chants, there's nothing mystical or magical here. It's not a rite or ritual or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. It's just to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. That's how we use it today, because we don't need to chant in order to remember the teachings, because we have books and audiobooks, videos, podcasts. We have things like this to be able to capture the teachings. If you read the English translations on the chants, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of this, I don't think the Buddha actually even created these chants. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death, because the Buddha doesn't walk around with ego and arrogance and say, here, chant these things to me. Right? This would be the ego, and someone who's gotten to enlightenment, and surely a Buddha, would have already eliminated their ego. They're not going to be putting themselves above people and looking down on people. So these chants were most likely created by his students out of respect and gratitude and appreciation, because if you've learned from a teacher how to eliminate your anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all these discontent feelings, and move your mind to this peaceful and joyful mental state that is enlightenment, you'd have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too, because the Buddha didn't want anything from his students. He didn't expect anything from his students. He just shared teachings to be able to help them experience this mental state where the mind can be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. And it's a permanent mental state that you can experience in this life. And you'll see that your mind's getting closer and closer to it. As you're training your mind, you're going to see situations where you were once angry and frustrated, that you're no longer experiencing that the mind is quite peaceful. So this is what the Buddha's teachings do. And I suspect his students were very appreciative of his generosity to share his teachings. So that's why I think these chants actually came from his students, not from him directly. So I'm going to be chanting them on the way in, which you guys are welcome to join in on. Then I'm going to come in with some guidance to be able to help you during the meditation. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet. We're just all meditating together. Everyone here and everyone online will just all be meditating at the same time. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And once again, you guys can join into that as well. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would use these at different times, and you would learn them at different different times, but oftentimes people are starting off in the seated position. So I'll give you guys some guidance on the seated position, but understand what I'm sharing with you are just suggestions. It's just guidance. It's not about everybody being in exactly the same position, because that's not actually possible. You can be sitting on the floor, on a chair. Maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or in a wheelchair or something like this. You can sit however you're comfortable. But these are some suggestions to maybe help you find something that's even more comfortable. Usually if you're on the floor, you have some cushions under your ear. This will kind of soften your seat a little bit. Then you just would like to lightly bring your legs together in the cross-leg position. If they're real tight, this will impede the circulation and it'll cause pain in the lower body. So if you just lightly bring your legs together, that's usually best. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets the hips up in the air and it lessens the angles at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, and it allows the circulation to flow. So if this is something that you'd like to do, you're welcome to do that. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. But again, it's not about everyone doing it the same way. There's other options here as well. You could put your palms on your thighs or on your knees. You could put your palms up. You could rest your hands comfortably in your lap. All of these are options for you, and you can find whatever is comfortable for you. The upper body is nice if you have this erect, where the sternum is up and the shoulders are back. This helps to keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you're real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you would like the upper body to be in the middle. Not only does it keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, but it also helps you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So those of you guys that are in chairs, or maybe if you're at home on a bench or a wheelchair or something like that, you might decide to sit with your feet cross-leg or maybe flat on the floor. All of these are options, but you can see me here in a chair with my legs crossed, so you could even sit that way if you like. It's really up to you. And the same thing with the upper body and the hands and arms. Just sit however you're comfortable. So I'm going to ease us into meditation with the chanting. Again, you guys are welcome to join in with this. And then afterwards, I'm going to come back in with the guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Potang Mahakawanhang Apiwateyami Savakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokawitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawap Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind focused on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะกะวาโพตังมหาควันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาควตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโพโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys here at the temple. Welcome to everyone online. Sawadee Kap. Nice to see all of you guys this morning. For those of you guys that's new to the temple, I'll share a few things with you to help you feel even more comfortable here. We have 2 bathrooms in the back of the room. You're welcome to use those at any time. Feel free to just help yourself to the restrooms. We even have restrooms outside the classroom. If you go out to the parking lot, you'll see signs that take you around to the main temple bathroom. So you're welcome to use those at any time. We even have snacks and refreshments and things like that over here that's provided by our students. So you're welcome to help yourself to anything over there during the class that you like. So again, welcome to everybody. Nice to see all of you guys here. Today is what we call our Pali Canon and English study group. This is a program that students usually will come into after they've already developed a foundation in some of our other classes or courses or retreats. But if this is your first time here, no worries. You're going to learn plenty today. But just understand it's taught in a little bit different way than I do some of the other programs. The program that happens on Sunday and Wednesday, this is called our group learning program. This is where a lot of students will start out either there or in some of our foundational courses or retreats. In the group learning program on Sunday and Wednesday, which I teach here at the temple, and I also live stream it both at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., what we do is we use this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, as our course text. And what we do is each Sunday we go chapter by chapter by chapter in order to help students to develop their understanding of the foundational teachings of the Buddha. This week we're in chapter 10, and you can actually get this book by downloading it for free from our website. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here at the temple by just reimbursing us for our printing cost, or you can get it on Amazon. And this is a really nice foundational text to be able to help you to develop a foundation in understanding the teachings that the Buddha shared in order to move your mind to this enlightened mental state where the mind can be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, having eliminated all those discontent feelings of anger, sadness, frustration, and others. By the time you train your mind to get to enlightenment, not only will the mind be peaceful and joyful permanently, but you'll have a high degree of focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. You'll notice that your personal, professional relationships are really blossoming. They're at ease because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships anymore. So you'll see that you can transform your mind and you can transform your life through transforming the relationships around you, where you can be at ease and really have harmonious relationships with everybody around you. You'll get to the point where you're not even in a bad mood any longer, that the causes and conditions that are producing this have been uprooted and eliminated from the mind. Oftentimes what we think in the unenlightened state, because of the lack of wisdom, is that we think that other people are causing us to be angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. But what you can see in the teachings of the Buddha, through learning them, through investigating and examining them, through reflecting on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false, and then through practicing his teachings to train your mind, is you'll be able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And because your own mind is causing these feelings, you can actually eliminate them. You don't need to go out into the world and teach other people to do things your way. That's not going to actually improve the condition of your mind in your life. If you think that way, you're just going to keep experiencing anger and frustration over and over and over again. But when you come to understand the truth about what's really happening within your own mind, you can actually uproot the causes and conditions that are producing these discontent feelings and the bad mood and the hostility and harshness. And now you can get to a point where your mind is always peaceful and always joyful, as well as all your relationships around you. And that needs an individual to decide that they're done with the anger. They're done with feeling sad and frustrated. They're done with broken relationships. They're tired of all that stuff, and they would like to do something new with their life. And this first book is a great place to start for anybody who's just interested in getting started with that. And then after students study the foundational teachings, they will typically come into a program like this where we're studying all the other books of our book series. We have a 13-book series, and in this program we study volumes 2 through 13 of this book series. Today we're in volume 6, which is the natural law of Kamma. This is a natural law that the Buddha taught, and this is what you're awakening to, among other natural laws, in order to move your mind to enlightenment. The teachings of the Buddha, they're not based on belief. It's based on you cultivating wisdom to understand the world around you. Because when you're living in a world that you don't understand, you will have struggles and difficulties. That's the lack of wisdom that the mind has about the natural laws around you. Now, some people refer to this as karma. You might have heard that before. That's the Sanskrit way of referring to this. That's just a different language. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, and that word that's used there is the word Kamma. So I use this word Kamma. But if it translated to just one English word, I would just use that because it'd be much easier for everyone to understand. But what this word means is it means cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. Whenever you make decisions, either wise or unwise, it's going to produce a result, either wholesome, Kamma, or wholesome results, or it's going to produce unwholesome results or unwholesome Kamma. So what you experience in your day-to-day life is based on decisions that you're making. Oftentimes people think that what you experience is based on good luck or bad luck, or destiny or fate. Or you might think that things that you experience is based on other people. Or sometimes people think that there's beings like God that is maybe controlling you and punishing you and rewarding you. This isn't actually true. What you're experiencing is the results of your decisions. And when you lack wisdom of this natural law, you're going to tend to make unwise decisions. It's going to produce unwholesome results, and then you'll experience that coming back to you. And you might actually be blaming other people for the things that you experience in your life. And as long as you do this, you're never able to cultivate the wisdom that you need in order to be able to make wiser decisions and experience improved results. One of the beauties about understanding the natural law of Kamma is that if there's anything that you don't particularly care for in your life and you would prefer not to happen, all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. So this natural law is very empowering, in that when you understand it through awakening to it, that you can then make different decisions in your life and experience different results. But as long as it's good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate, or it's other people that are causing you to experience what you experience, or if it's God or some other being controlling you, you're locked in. you can't actually change your life, because you can't change your good luck and bad luck. You can't change destiny or fate. You can't change other people. You can't change God. If you think this way, then you're locked in. You're a robot. You can't do anything about your life. But you understand that that's not true. You actually can improve your life by cultivating wisdom, making better decisions, and then you'll experience better results, more wholesome Kamma. So the cultivation of wisdom is what you're doing on this path. That's why you're not believing any of the teachings of the Buddha. You're learning them, investigating and examining. You're reflecting, independently verifying. You practice. So what we're doing here by practicing the teachings is you're training your mind. You're integrating the tools and techniques into your life so that you can actually train your mind and uproot certain pollutions of the mind that the Buddha taught. So that when he discovered these pollutions, he also discovered the tools and techniques of how to actually eradicate these pollutions from the mind. And then you can get to the point where you're experiencing more and more of those qualities of the enlightened mind. So the way that I teach all the other courses and retreats and programs is it's a more traditional style of learning, where I'll teach for like 15, 20, 30 minutes and I'll open up for questions. I'll teach for 15, 20, 30 minutes, open up for questions. But in this particular program on Saturdays, it's called the Pali Canon and English Study Group. What the Pali Canon is it's the original teachings of the Buddha. They're in 45 volumes of books that are about this thick. And what we do in this program is I invite students from here at the temple or anybody in Zoom to be able to read one of these chapters of the teachings of the Buddha. In these particular book series, I have these excerpts. You can see this one's not even a page long, where this is a chapter where the Buddha was speaking and explaining and teaching some aspect of his teachings. Because this particular book is all about the natural law of Kamma, all of these chapters are related to that. So you've got the original words of the Buddha. You've got a reference which takes you back to the original source teachings in the Pali Canon. And then you've got words from me that are helping you understand how to integrate this into your day-to-day life. Because the Buddha's teachings are very clear, very concise, and very precise. You don't need to interpret his teachings, but it does help to have a dedicated practitioner and teacher kind of guiding you through. It's you doing all the work. It's your independent practice, being guided to enlightenment. You need to do the work to learn and cultivate the wisdom, but having a teacher is going to help you to be able to understand the things that you need to learn, kind of like a tour guide. So if there's anyone here at the temple that would like to read this, or if there's anyone online that would like to read it, you can volunteer. And then after someone reads it, I will then share some teachings on that for about 5 minutes or so. Then I'll open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to each one of these chapters. And then we'll move into the next one. If you'd like to either volunteer to read here at the temple, or you have any questions, we have microphones here in the white bowl. If you could just come get a microphone, that way if you use the microphone, we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. All you need to do is press the gray button, the lights will come on, and then you can hold it up to your chin and we'll be able to hear you here, and they'll be able to hear you online. And then when you're done, if you could turn it off, that'll help with the feedback so that there's no feedback. And then you can keep these microphones with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share the microphone. For those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like by just unmuting your microphone. And the same thing for anyone in Zoom who would like to read, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and then you're welcome to read. We'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and we'll be able to hear you throughout the live stream. So it looks like Marcy is already volunteering to read. So Marcy, if you'd like to go ahead with this first one, you're more than welcome.
Thank you, Teacher David. All that occurs without a cause or a condition. Monks, I approach those ascetics and Brahmins who hold such a doctrine and view as this: whatever this person experiences, whether pleasure, pain, or neither pain nor pleasure, all that occurs without a cause or condition. And I say to them, is it true that you, venerable ones, hold such a doctrine and view? Ask them this, they affirm it. Then I say to them, in such a case, it is without a cause or condition that you might destroy life, what is not given, indulge in sexual activity, speak falsehoods, produce argumentative speech, speak harshly, indulge in idle chatter, that you might be full of longing, have a mind of ill will, and hold wrong view. Those who fall back on absence of cause and condition as the essential truth have no interest to do what should be done and to avoid doing what should not be done, nor do they make an effort in this respect, since they do not apprehend as true and valid anything that should be done or should not be done. They are muddle-minded. They do not guard the mind, and even the personal designation aesthetic could not be legitimately applied to them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marcy. So here the Buddha is talking about this natural law of Kamma, where he was talking to some other students that were learning with other teachers. That oftentimes you might think that during the lifetime of a Buddha, he must have been the only one teaching, but there were actually other people that were teaching, that were claiming that they had figured out how to get to enlightenment. Because there's no outward characteristic that identifies a Buddha. It's not like there's a mole in a certain place or their ears turned a certain way, and now everybody would know that that person's a Buddha. That if you understand the criteria of what a Buddha is, you'd be able to identify a Buddha, but the people during that lifetime didn't necessarily have that wisdom. So there were different teachers that were teaching and claiming that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment. And there was these different students learning with them. And sometimes the Buddha and his students and these other people, they would come in contact together, especially when they were eating food. They would tend to eat kind of in parks and groves and places like this. So the Buddha came in contact with these ascetics, meaning people who were on the path to enlightenment, that were giving up worldly life in order to be able to get to enlightenment. That's not what you need to do in order to get to enlightenment, but some people choose to ordain, and that's one method of choosing to get to enlightenment. What Brahmin are, these are Hindu priests. These are individuals who are doing rites or rituals and ceremonies and worship. It was believed during the lifetime of the Buddha that you couldn't improve your life unless you got these people to do rites or rituals for you. And the Buddha knew that that wasn't true, but nonetheless, these Brahmin, these Hindu priests, would sometimes learn with the Buddha. And sometimes these other students from other teachers would come and learn with the Buddha too. So he asked these individuals, is it true that you guys have the perspective or the view that whatever you experience, whether it's pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant, is it true that all of that is caused without a cause or condition? The pleasant feelings are like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. The painful feelings are things like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, things like this. The neither painful nor pleasant feelings, this is like shyness. It's not painful, it's not pleasant. It's neither painful nor pleasant. Or say you were sitting on public transportation and somebody came and sat next to you really, really close and you didn't know this person. Maybe your body was touching their body. You probably say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant. You're kind of uncomfortable or dissatisfied in that situation. That's the mind that's experiencing that feeling. And there's a certain cause and condition of why these feelings are being experienced. And the Buddha knows what that cause and condition is, but not everybody does. Maybe you guys don't even know if you haven't studied to be able to see this truth for yourself. So the Buddha asked them, is it true that you guys think that these things are caused without a cause and condition? And when he asked them this, they affirm it. They said, yes, that's true. These feelings happen just basically randomly. There's no cause or condition behind it. So when they said this, the Buddha said to them, well, is it without a cause or condition that you basically kill, that you steal, that you indulge in sexual activity, that you lie, that you produce argumentative speech, that you speak harshly? Indulging in idle chatter is like random chit chat where there's no purpose or no, real beneficial result, that the mind is just kind of like yada, 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 yada. It's not really a conversation. It's more broadcast, right? You might have done that yourself, or you might have been around people like that where they're just talking, 10, 15, 20 minutes and there's no real conversation. It's just a broadcast. This is idle idle chatter. And then he says, is it true that you might be full of longing? This is called craving, desire, attachment, the wanting, the expectations, the seeking for satisfaction outside of yourself, thinking that next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide lasting satisfaction. It's kind of like the mind has this unquenchable thirst that you might think that, oh, I know what's going to make me happy. More money. Let me chase some more money for a while. And the mind will chase and chase and chase and chase. And it'll maybe get that more money. And then you'll be happy for a period of time. But then that happiness arises, it changes, and then it fades away. And your mind's back in the sadness. And then you might say, oh, I know what I need. I need a bigger car, a nicer house. That's what I need. Let me chase that for a while. And then the mind chases that. And then you either get it and you get happy, or you don't get it and you get angry or sad or frustrated. And then the mind's like, I know what I need to be happy. I need a new boyfriend or girlfriend. Let me chase that for a while. So now the mind will chase that for a while. And then if you get that, you'll be happy and excited. But if you don't get it, you'll be angry or frustrated. Then the mind says, I know what I need. I need to go to Thailand. That's what's going to make everything better. Let's go to Thailand. That'll make me so happy, right? And now you go to Thailand, and you might be happy when you go to Thailand. But then when it's time to go back home, it's like, oh, I have to go back home. The mind's maybe disgruntled and agitated. So the underlying cause that's causing these discontent feelings is this longing, this craving, this desire, this seeking for satisfaction externally, wanting things to be a certain way, craving for them to be a certain way. You can think back to when we were children. If our parents gave us chocolate and ice cream, man, that was a good day, right? And if we got chocolate and ice cream 3 or 4 times a day, oh my goodness, that was like the best day ever. We were so happy. But at some point, our parents said, no, you can't have chocolate and ice cream today. And we were angry and frustrated. This is because the mind is longing, yearning, craving for these things to be permanent. And if the mind gets what it wants, it gets happy. It gets those pleasant feelings. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful feelings like anger, sadness, and frustration and others. And then when you're experiencing those painful feelings, what the mind will tend to do is it will attribute those feelings to something external. So now it will push people away. You might have done this in your life where you've pushed family members away or you push friends away, thinking that that's going to solve the problem because your mind falsely believed that the problem is external. So you push these people away. But you can see that didn't solve the problem because your mind still gets angry. You still get frustrated. You still get annoyed. If that actually was the true problem, when you push them away, you wouldn't get angry or frustrated anymore. But you still get frustrated. You still get annoyed. Or the other thing you might do when you falsely attribute these feelings being created by something external is you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to the people around you through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And now you might be damaging your relationships where people are choosing to leave out of your life. So if you're being bitter and harsh and hostile to people, it's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to convince that person through fear to do things your way, through harsh, argumentative speech. Or you might be putting your expectations on people, trying to control them and force them to do things your way. And again, none of this works. You can't live harmoniously with all beings this way because it's only a matter of time before somebody does something that you don't want them to do. And now you push them away, you're bitter, harsh, and hostile with them, or you put your expectations on them. So as long as the mind has a craving for permanence, it's not going to be able to experience that because you live in an impermanent world. Everything around you is constantly changing. So if you form your happiness based on this condition, like it's sunny outside, so you'll be happy, well, the sun is not permanent. So that means your happiness is not going to be permanent either. As soon as the sun changes and now it's raining, you'll be sad, you'll be frustrated. This is how you can see it's not other people that's causing your emotions, because in that example, there isn't any person even involved. Or if you look at your bank account and you get so happy when it's up here, well, when that changes, and it will change because the whole world is constantly changing, this is impermanence. When the bank account goes here, you'll be frustrated, you'll be agitated, you'll be annoyed. So again, you can see that your mind is causing these feelings because in this example, there isn't even any people involved. So you can independently verify what I'm sharing, which is your own mind is causing these feelings. You can take a situation where you've recently been angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed, and you can look at that situation and you can look at it with these fresh eyes. What was it that your mind wanted? There was something you were expecting. There was something you were longing, yearning for. There was some craving or desire. And if you would have gotten it, you would have been happy or excited or some other pleasant feeling. But because you didn't get what you wanted, the mind experienced these painful feelings of anger, sadness, frustration, or some other painful feeling. And this is what the mind is experiencing in the unenlightened state because it hasn't been trained to not do this. It continues to form its inner feelings based on some condition. So there's this mental state of enlightenment that you can get to where the mind is peaceful and joyful permanently because it's not basing its inner feelings on some condition. So conditional happiness is unsatisfactory because it arises, it changes, and it fades away. It's based on some condition. But you can get to the point where you're experiencing unconditioned happiness, where the mind is just always happy. So the Buddha is saying, is it because of this longing that you're experiencing? Or he's saying, is your mind full of this longing, this ill will? That's the anger and hatred and ill will. That's when you have cravings in your mind and you're not getting what you want. You'll have this anger and hatred that will arise, this bitterness and hostility, this resentment towards others. And then he says, is it without a cause and condition that you have wrong view? What wrong view is where you have a lack of wisdom of what's really causing these feelings. That if you have wrong view, that means the mind would be blaming other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. That's what wrong view is. So the Buddha understands what's causing these things and how to eliminate them. So he's saying here that those who fall back on the absence of cause and condition, essentially those who don't understand the natural law of Kamma, of cause and effect and action and result, as an essential truth, have no interest to do what should be done and to avoid doing what should not be done, nor do they make an effort in this respect, right? Because if you're just walking around the world thinking that what you experience is good luck or bad luck, or destiny or fate, or it's because of other people that's causing the things that you experience, or if it's because of God that's controlling what you experience, or what the Buddha is talking about here is there is no cause and condition that's producing these things. They're just happening randomly. If one thinks that way, then they have no interest to do something better. They have no interest to improve their life and make things better. So that's what he's saying here. And they don't make an effort in that respect. And he says, since they do not apprehend as true and valid anything that should be done or should not be done, they are muddle-minded. What muddle-minded means is the mind's lacking concentration, because the Buddha understands that if somebody thinks this way, then their mind has these pollutions that he discovered. And when you have pollutions in your mind, you'll lack concentration. You have a lack of memory. You'll have difficulties remembering things. The degrading of the mind that people tend to associate with aging and old age, this is only because the mind isn't trained. If you train your mind, you won't have a degrading of the mind as you age. But if you allow the pollutions to stay in your mind, as you age, your mind will degrade. You'll lack memory and focus and concentration. Even when you're young, you can have that same thing because the pollution in the mind is hindering it from performing optimally. When you train your mind can perform optimally, much like a musical instrument. When a musical instrument is tuned to the perfect tune and you strum the strings of a guitar, it'll play the way the instrument was intended to play. It'll play beautiful music. So if this mind isn't tuned the way that it can be trained, then it won't perform optimally. And now you'll experience a lack of concentration, or the Buddha refers to it as muddle-minded. And then he says, they do not guard the mind. Guarding the mind is to have awareness of mind or mindfulness, so that when the anger is arising, you can learn how to cut that off and let it go, so that the mind doesn't need to experience that. This is part of transforming the mind to get it to the point where it no longer experiences that. He says, even the personal designation aesthetic could not be legitimately applied to them. So he's saying these people who don't even understand that there's a cause and condition that's leading to any of these particular things, he's saying they're not even on the path to enlightenment, because they don't understand this natural law of Kamma, of cause and effect, because that's how you get to enlightenment, is by awakening the mind to the wisdom of these natural laws. When you lacked wisdom of natural law of gravity, you had difficulties and you struggles. We all did when we were growing up. We fell down, we hit our head, we broke our toys, we busted our elbows and our knees, but slowly but surely we gained wisdom of the natural law of gravity, and we started making wiser choices. We started tying our shoes tighter, looking at the surface of the street. We're now at the point where we can ride bicycles and climb ladders because we make wise decisions about this natural law of gravity. So there's other natural laws that the mind needs to awaken to, and having awoken to them, you won't have the struggles and difficulties in the world like we did when we had the lack of wisdom of the natural law of gravity. So by awakening to the natural law of Kamma, you won't have the struggles and difficulties in your day-to-day life because you now fully understand the world that you live in. When you live in a world that you don't understand, you'll struggle. You'll have difficulties. If you've ever watched the news or you've ever seen something your brothers and sisters or your mom or dad did and you're like, I just don't understand them. I don't know why they keep doing that, right? This might be something you do when you watch the news or you hear stories about your family. This is the mind living in a world that it doesn't understand. So awakening to this natural law is to be able to understand the world that you live in. And this idea that all occurs without a cause or condition would be part of the lack of wisdom. It would be part of wrong view. It would be part of what we call the unknowing of true reality. It would be confusion or misunderstanding. And now when you walk out into the world with confusion and misunderstanding, you'll make unwise decisions, and it's going to lead to unwholesome results or unwholesome Kamma. So let me know what questions you guys have here at the temple. Remember, you can use the microphones online. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Marcy has a question. So go ahead, Marcy.
You, Teacher David. So prior to this being practicing the Buddha's teachings, it would take advantage of any opportunity to, I guess, in that mindset, take an advantage of a situation. So, for example, the other day there was a situation where, theft could have been a possibility, but in that moment, I haven't had any kind of notion or thought of that type of situation. And instantly the thought came in and I was like, wait a minute, that's what is the mind doing? Why is it even thinking this? I understand that if I decide to make this decision to take what is not given, there is going to be an unwholesome result for this, and I'm not interested in it. And then it kind of just passed away. But as we read through this and I understand the cause and the condition and stuff, I mean, is it still, question is like, I haven't had these thoughts in over a couple of years now, and now all of a sudden this situation popped up into the mind. Is this normal? Like, is this the mind still like reaching to see if there's that pollution still there? Or is this a temptation of Mara still trying to affect this being Marcy?
So it sounds like you said you had a craving to take something that wasn't given, right?
Well, a thought came in. It was just like, oh, there's an opportunity here. I could take this and nobody would know. But then I was like, wait a minute.
Okay.
That's not what I want to do.
Okay, so the way that the cravings and the way that the anger and the ignorance is kind of like a wild bush that's growing. And on this path, all the different training that you've learned, you're cutting that back and cutting that back and cutting that back and cutting that back. And eventually you get to the point where you uproot these out of the mind. And that's where the mind's fully purified. And now you'll experience the peace and the joy. But as you are cutting that back and you haven't quite uprooted it fully out of the mind, you can have these flickers where the mind is kind of experiencing these kind of things. So just like a candle, when it's going out, sometimes it flickers and flickers. It looks like it's going out and then it comes back on. It's the same thing with these cravings, and that particular craving, that's what it's going to do, is it's going to be a thought in your mind like, oh, I could take this, where by the time you uproot the craving, desire, attachment out of the mind fully, and it's no longer there, then you won't even have that thought any longer. So you did what would be advisable, which is cut that off and let it go and don't act upon it. So that way, eventually it'll be fully uprooted out of the mind and you won't even have that thought.
Now, with that mental thought, it was an unwholesome thought, right? This being Marcy didn't act upon it, but is there any, because it's a mental thought that has unwholesome qualities, will I experience an unwholesome karma, or did I negate that by not following through with that mental thought? And now the experience of wholesome karma was the fact that I did not take advantage of the situation. I was easily able to let it go and move past it.
Experiencing that thought itself is unwholesome karma because the mind hasn't fully eradicated craving, desire, attachment. The mind is experiencing this thought that's coming up. So that is unwholesome karma. And now that the thought has arisen, now by cutting it off and letting it go, that's now going to produce wholesome karma, that you'll have less and less of that going forward.
Right. Thank you so much, Teacher David. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, let me see if we have any questions on YouTube or Facebook. Okay, I'm not. Oh, there's something here. Let's see. Let's see. Is it possible for you to speak slowly? I'm not very good at English, but I have learned a little and I'm still learning. So I want you to speak slowly if you can, because I want to learn from you. I'm speaking as slow as I'm going to be able to speak. Perhaps you can learn as much as you can learn. Unfortunately, I can't meet everybody's expectation of how slow that they would like me to learn, or how slow they would like me to talk. But it sounds like you're learning from the speed that I am talking, so that's helpful. Here's some more from the same person. I have a very bad thing, which is attachment to things. I want help. How do I get rid of attachment? What you need to be able to do is you need to be able to start with this first book. And this is actually an individual that I know from Egypt, when I went to Egypt. You need to get this book so that you can slowly learn the Eightfold Path. Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 is the core central teaching of the Buddha, where you're going to be able to learn the entire path to enlightenment and train the mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. You have a question?
I was thinking, if we are able to guard our mind and observe what's happening inside the mind, and eventually we are able to get rid of that pursuit of longing, we could throw away our ill will and no longer hold wrong views. What will be the ultimate end of these processes? Does it mean that we will reach, we will get the peace in mind eventually? That's my first question.
Let me answer that first. Okay. The answer is yes. What you're talking about is eliminating craving, anger, and what we refer to as ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality. This is a high-level way of describing the pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. The deepest level of detail that the Buddha describes is called the 10 fetters. These are 10 individual pollutions in the mind. That's what you're ultimately working to uproot and eliminate. But when you're first getting started on the path, you're learning this from a high level, and it's referred to as craving, anger, or ignorance, or unknowing of true reality, a lack of wisdom, a misunderstanding. So when you uproot that out of the mind, those are called the unwholesome roots. And when you're making decisions through them, it's going to produce unwholesome results. And now when you uproot them out of the mind, you'll replace that with the wholesome roots of generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. This is the exact opposites of craving. Would be generosity, where you're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. And then the opposite of anger or hatred would be loving kindness, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And the opposite of this unknowing of true reality or ignorance is wisdom, where you've cultivated the wisdom to understand the natural laws. And that's why you're not interested in believing anything on the path, because you need to be able to get to wisdom. And you can't get to wisdom through belief, because you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because someone someone convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it. So you would like to get to the point where you know the truth, and you can only get to that through learning, examining, and investigating, reflecting to independently verify, and then you practice in order to integrate the teachings into your life and see the truth for yourself. So the result of having purified the mind, which is getting rid of the longing, the ill will, and the wrong views, that would be a purified mind. And now the mind's going to be enlightened, where it's peaceful and joyful, and you have the focus and concentration and all those other qualities that I was talking about.
Thank you. So if we reach that status, as Buddhism says, all sensations is suffering. So it means is it equal that when we have the peace in mind, we lose the desires? Is that the same? Are they equal? When we have no more sensations, we have no more desire. We have the peace in mind.
Yeah. It's important to understand the way that we're defining desire, because oftentimes people don't understand this word. The word desire, in the way that we describe it in Buddhism, is a longing, yearning, chasing after something, and forming your inner feelings based on whether you get that thing or not. If you get it, you get happy. If you don't get it, you get sad or frustrated. So that's the longing, yearning, that's the craving, desire, attachment. And yes, that's part of the path, is to bring the mind back so that it's no longer longing, yearning, and forming its inner feelings based on some condition. But if your mind swung all the way over here to the other side, which is what people typically think is occurring, where you're dull and lethargic and you have no interest to do anything in the world, that's not enlightenment either. That's the mind swinging to the other side. The mind hasn't come to the middle. When you train your mind to come to the middle, you can gradually pursue things as a goal, objective, or interest, but you're not forming your inner feelings based on whether you get that thing or not. So that's what you would be able to experience, is the peace and joy, because you have eliminated the longing, the yearning, and the forming your inner feelings based on these things.
I ask this question because sometimes I want to I hope the people around me, they can have that status of peace in mind. However, I find sometimes it's difficult for me to influence them or bring them something to get them reach that status. So I was saying, if not having that desire means whether I can change or not, it doesn't impact my own feelings or sensations. If I cannot change them, it doesn't make me sad. It doesn't make me frustrated. Did I get it correctly?
There's no part of this path that is about changing other people. You wouldn't be interested in that. Each individual person needs to decide for themselves that they're interested in improvement and change. Your role on this path to enlightenment is to change your own mind and train your own mind. And then as you're becoming more and more peaceful and more joyful, the people around you will take notice of that. And then they're going to ask you, hey, what are you doing? You're always so peaceful. You're always smiling. You're always so friendly and polite and respectful. Your life seems to be going so well. What are you doing? And that's where you're like, oh, I trained my mind through the teachings of the Buddha. Oh, how do I do that? But if you're out there trying to convince others or influence others to do things a certain way, that is a craving, that is a longing, that's a desire, that's wanting other people to be a certain way. And you would like to not do that, because the more that you're trying to force other people to do things a certain way, the less likely they are to do that thing. Because when people try to force you to do something, you don't like it, you kind of resist it. So you're not interested in being out there trying to get other people to do this work. Instead, you focus on it yourself within your own mind. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Looks like we have some questions back there. If you could get a microphone over here, we have plenty of them. And you can even borrow hers. Yeah.
I thank you very much for the lecture part. Sorry, I was late, so I didn't get the whole thing. But you happened to, some of your words happened to touch me, because I am in a struggling, like my my close family member that's pushing me away, like cut the connection totally. And out of nowhere, it brings me a lot of pain. And I've been always thinking what I could do to change that. So you were telling us not to do that, that do not attribute the problems to the external world or other people. What if someone, important in my life is doing that? And your answer to that lady is kind of giving me another enlightenment that if I want her to change, right? Right now, what I want is I want her to change, my mom to change. She's pushing me away. But is it also a craving, like me wanting my mom to change, to turn back to me? That's also a craving?
Yes.
So I should let it go as well?
Yes. So whenever you're longing, yearning, you're wanting things to be a certain way, wanting mom to be a certain way, that's a craving, desire, attachment. What you need to understand is impermanence, that things are constantly changing in the world, and mom is never going to do things the way you want her to do it. As long as your mind's wanting and expecting mom to be a certain way, she's not going to be able to meet those expectations permanently. And now you're going to be frustrated and agitated or annoyed. Yes. And this is what's happening is mom probably wants you to be a certain way. She's putting expectations on you and you are not meeting her expectations. So she's getting angry and frustrated. Yes. And she thinks the way to solve this problem is to push you away. That's aversion. So you've learned this from mom. A lot of people learn this from their family, right? Is that they're learning to put expectations on people. And the problem is that your mom thinks this is her love. She thinks the way to love you is to get you to do things her way. And she thinks that she knows what's best for you, rather than realizing that you are your own individual being and you need to make your own decisions in life to feel good about your own life. So as long as she's putting her expectations on you, you're not going to be able to meet those permanently. She gets those painful feelings and now she pushes you away. And you can't control that. You can't fix that. Mom has to figure this out. You can give her books like this as a gift. You can send her little videos to help her understand this. But you can only do that so much because otherwise you're just pushing it on her and forcing it on her. So the Buddha teaches you that people like your parents and people that are close to you, if you have compassion for them, which is concern for their misfortune, and you think that they will heed your advice, that we can help them to understand these teachings so that there's a humble way to be able to do that. But you're not doing it in a forceful way. But in order to be able to do that, you would need to learn the teachings first, because you're not going to be able to help mom if you don't have the wisdom yourself. So while there's no part of this path which is to go out into the world and influence and force other people to do certain things, there are people that are close to us that we can skillfully help them to understand the teachings. But you need to first understand the teachings yourself before you put yourself in that situation. And that can take, several months before you get to that point where you're ready to kind of help mom. So if I was you, what I would do is I would step away. If mom's pushing you away, okay, just step away, do some work for yourself to learn these teachings and train your own mind. And then 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, mom's going to be in a different place. You're going to be in a different place within your mind. And now you can humbly talk to mom and I can guide you in how to rekindle this relationship. But now you can do it without attachment, because as long as you're holding on to mom and wanting her to be permanent and wanting and expecting her to be a certain way, you guys aren't going to be able to have a healthy relationship, because she wants you to be a certain way and you can't do that all the time, and you want her to be a certain way and she can't do that all the time. So you guys need to get rid of your expectations of each other and just love each other as you are. Don't put expectations on each other. Just love each other unconditionally. But you need to learn how to do this, and you need to train your mind how to do this, because it doesn't come natural because of this wrong view, because of the lack of wisdom that the mind has in the unenlightened state. It doesn't understand unconditional love. So your mom thinks she's loving you, but because of her lack of wisdom, she doesn't understand that that's not love.
Thank you. I think it's already, it's actually, maybe I've never really think about this from my mom's perspective, but you just pointed out
But your goal in life isn't to meet your parents' expectations, because your parents are going to have expectations and you'll work feverishly to get to them, and they will be happy temporarily for a week or two or a month or two, but then their expectations are going to change. And now you're feverishly working towards those. I learned this very early in life. My family came to me and they said, hey, you're spending too much time around your guy friends. You have all these guy friends. Why don't you go get a girlfriend? And I thought about it for a few months. And I was like, all right, I'll go get a girlfriend. So I went and got a girlfriend, started spending time with this girlfriend. And they came to me and they said, you're spending too much time with your girlfriend. You need to spend time with us. And I was like, man, you can't make these people happy, right? Because they keep changing their mind, right? So your goal isn't to make other people happy, because if you're trying to make other people happy, that's conditional happiness, and they'll only be happy as long as you're doing things their way. As long as you're doing those things, they will be happy. But when you stop doing those things, they won't be happy anymore. And you will stop doing those things because of impermanence. You're not going to do the things they want you to do permanently. So if you tried to live up to your mom's expectations, you'd be living your life according to mom, in the way mom wants you to do it. But now you're not feeling fulfilled. You're not feeling satisfied in the world because you're not living the life you're interested in living. You're living the life she wants you to live. Well, mom's got her life. She gets to live her life her way, and you get to live your life your way. But mom's mind doesn't understand this because she's lacking the wisdom. So if you gain the wisdom first, and now as you gain that wisdom and understanding how to live this better way of life that the Buddha taught, when you learn this better way of life, then you can slowly help mom to be able to see this. And now you guys can have a much better relationship, because now you aren't putting your expectations on each other and trying to control each other to do things a certain way.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, I feel like I'm still the child that I'm longing for my mom's love, unconditional love. And I just feel like I'm not getting that.
Yeah, and you're not going to as long as mom doesn't understand what unconditional love is. But if you understand what unconditional love is and you start practicing it more and more, the people around you will start understanding what it is and start practicing that, right? So my wife,
pass it on.
Yeah, my wife and my son, they didn't understand what unconditional love was until I started to understand it. And then when I understood it and I started practicing unconditional love, then unconditional love started to be experienced by me. But as long as I didn't understand what it was, because of this natural law of Kamma, I was practicing craving, desire, attachment, masquerading as love. I wanted my wife to do this. I wanted my son to do this. I wanted other people to do that. And because that's what I was putting out, that what was coming back to me. But when I started understanding true love and I started practicing unconditional love and started putting that out, now I get so much unconditional love coming back to me, not just from my family, but from my students and people who are around me. I get all this unconditional love, but that's because I'm practicing unconditional love. So that's why you need to learn it first before you ever improve any of your other relationships. Sometimes when we're experiencing difficult relationships, we really want other people to change, right? This might be where you're at. You're just sitting back. You're just wanting other people to change. And this is what we tend to do. And we just get angry and frustrated because nobody else will change. We think we're perfect in the unenlightened state because you have ego in your mind. You have this arrogance and pride thinking you're so perfect. Everybody else is the problem. So we sit back and we just wait for everyone else to change. And then we get frustrated because our life is so difficult and challenging. But when you take control of your life, which is what I was kind of talking about at the beginning, and you start implementing change within your own life and you start cultivating your own wisdom, now when you start practicing that, that's when you see things changing in your life. Because your life is kind of like a log jam, and your relationship with your mom is like a log jam, and you got to pull out this log of anger, this log of craving, desire, attachment, this log of ignorance and unknowing a true reality, this resentment perhaps, or frustration, this longing for mom's attention. When you start clearing out these pollutions, things can start flowing better. But as long as you've got this log jam, you can't do that. So you need to start learning how to pull out these logs that aren't serving you well any longer.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have some more?
Sit down.
Thank you. This has been wonderful to join you for 2 days this week. This week in the United States has been a very difficult week to practice not being attached to outcomes and to the world that I know I'm going to come back to. So I'm wondering if you could talk about the Buddhist approach to acts of resistance and fighting oppression with a Buddhist mindset. What is our role in that?
Can you give me some examples of that so that then I can talk more detail for you?
Sure. So I'm a progressive activist in the United States. And so I've been trying to think about what I want to be mindful when I come back to the United States about how I use my energy in a positive, productive way to fight against the oppression of the Trump administration. Mm-hmm. People are being rounded up in fields in California and sent back to Mexico. 60% of our workforce is going to be gone. There's lots of things that are very difficult to hear. Yesterday I saw, people coming and singing as a group in Washington, D.C. and it moved me to see those kinds of acts of resistance. I was thinking about, as a Buddhist, like, how can I help organize in a way that is true to my Buddhist principles, but also working towards ending the oppression and suffering of people on a much bigger kind of organizing way of doing that.
Okay, perfect. So when you understand what's going on in the human mind, which is this craving, this anger, and this ignorance or a knowing of true reality, then you can understand the solutions, which is generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So each individual person, when they're making decisions from the unenlightened state, and there's a lot of unenlightened people in the world, including in politics and the USA and places like this, that there's a lot of craving, anger, and ignorance. Craving is, I want it this way. And when it's that way, you're happy. And when it's not that way, people are angry. And then when that anger is coming up, there's the pushing away, there's the bitterness, the harshness, the hostility, and the expectations. And all this is coming from the lack of wisdom. So when you understand this, and you understand the solution is cultivation of wisdom, if you're going to do things like being an activist and trying to help people, you need to understand that the goal is not to fight. This is a lot of what goes on in the world, is fighting, and people are fighting for what they believe in, so to speak. But that fight doesn't actually lead to anything, because that's just coming from craving, anger, and ignorance. Instead, you can come from a position of wisdom where you understand that in order for things to improve in this society, people need to have more generosity, there needs to be more loving kindness, and there needs to be more wisdom. So if you're going to change the minds of individuals in terms of helping them to see better decision making, they need to be willing to cultivate wisdom. So if I was going to host an event where we are protesting about a particular government decision, you would be interested to include some aspect of it that is helping people to cultivate wisdom. That it's not just screaming from a megaphone, holding picket signs. Of course, sometimes those things can divulge into rioting and looting and things like that. But what you would like to do is have education be part of it. I think one of the great examples of this is Martin Luther King. I think that he did an excellent job of organizing and making education part of his movement, where he was able to educate people in the speeches that he would give. And that's what you would like to be able to do, is add a component of education and helping people to cultivate the wisdom of why what is currently happening is unwise. And now, if these people that are making the unwise decisions are able to listen to that and understand it, they will cultivate some wisdom based on their choices. And now your event has helped them to be able to do that. And now they will perhaps be willing to make improved decisions. So understanding that the mind is going to need gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, that it's not going to be just one event that is going to lead to improvement. But if you can have like a series of things, whether it's literature, whether it's, TV or YouTube ads or Facebook ads or little memes or events where there's, yes, there's maybe entertainment and concerts and different speeches, but there's wisdom that's embedded into this movement where people are gaining this wisdom in multiple different channels. Now you kind of saturate that part of the world with a certain amount of wisdom that they're lacking. And now when you see that lack of wisdom, you provide that wisdom, but ultimately that person needs to choose to learn that wisdom. That's what I was saying here, that your goal isn't to go out into the world and change other people, but you can make wisdom available. And now if people choose to learn that wisdom, they can experience change and improvement. Okay. You have a question, Jack?
Okay. As we've talked about, a lot of it is about training the mind against cravings, desires. Mm-hmm. How about when subliminal messages, mm-hmm. when you're bombarded to actually exploit human nature, the actual DNA, our actual DNA, to force you to buy things and make you desire things? Mm-hmm. How do you combat that?
Nobody can force you to do anything. The only thing that you're required to do in life is die, right? So if you see a advertisement that shows you this brand new car and wow, this is going to help you get the most beautiful man or beautiful woman in the world. Well, if that's your craving and now you allow that to spring up into the mind, when you see that advertisement, it's going to entice you to buy that new car. So that's where the Buddha is talking about here, where he's talking about how they don't guard their mind, right? You need to guard your mind and knowing what is wise and unwise. And now when you see this advertisement of a car, it's like, wow, that is a beautiful car, but I don't have to go out and buy it to have a very good life. So if with beings in the world having so much craving and longing, yearning, and desire, yeah, people can market, and now that marketing is arising the craving in their mind, but it's that person who's responsible for their own mind. They're responsible for their own decisions and their own craving. But because of the lack of wisdom that the vast majority of the world has about what's going on in the mind, yeah, their craving is arising, and now they're going out there and maybe buying all these different things that they really don't necessarily need. But at the end of the day, it's their decision to do it. And they're digesting this content and now choosing to go out and actually buy these things. But if you've trained your mind and you're guarding your mind, which is a personal choice for you to make, now nobody can influence you to do anything because you know what's wise and unwise, and you're living within your means of what it is that you need to be able to acquire in order to sustain your life. Mm-hmm. Okay, so wow, that was really good for one chapter. You guys had a great discussion, learned a lot. Okay, it looks like, Marcy has some more. Okay, you have another question, Marcy?
No, I was just raising my hand to read next if there was no one else that would like to read. And I would also like to say thank you to everyone there today. These questions have been wonderful. I am learning so much. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, this is chapter 22. Is there someone here that would like to read this, or someone online? Go ahead, Pat. Yeah, go for it.
Worst kind of doctrine, that there is no Kamma. Monks, a hair blanket is declared to be the worst kind of woven garments. A hair blanket is cold in cold weather, hot in hot weather, ugly, foul-smelling, and uncomfortable. So too, the doctrine of Makali is declared the worst among the doctrines of various ascetics. The unwise man Makali teaches the doctrine in view, there is no Kamma, no deed, no energy, that is not only is there no result from Kamma, but also no Kamma itself. All deeds are null. Monks, the fortunate ones, arahants, the perfectly enlightened ones of the past taught a doctrine of Kamma, a doctrine of deeds, a doctrine of energy. Yet the unwise man, Makali, contradicts them with his claim, there is no Kamma, no deed, no energy. The fortunate ones, arahants, the perfectly enlightened ones of the future will also teach a doctrine of Kamma, a doctrine of deeds, a doctrine of energy. Yet the unwise man, Makali, contradicts them with his claim, there is no Kamma, no deed, no energy. At present, I am the arahant. the perfectly enlightened one, and I teach a doctrine of Kamma, a doctrine of deeds, a doctrine of energy. Yet the unwise man Pali contradicts me with his claim, there is no Kamma, no deed, no energy. Just as a trap set at the mouth of a river would bring about harm, pain, calamity, and disaster to many fish, so too the unwise man Pali is, as it were, a trap for people, who has arisen in the world for the harm, pain, calamity, and disaster of many beings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So here the Buddha is commenting about how the worst kind of teachings or collection of teachings would be that there is no Kamma. And if somebody thought this way, what he's saying is it's going to bring about much calamity. Because if you think whatever decisions that you make, they're not producing any particular result, then what he's saying here is that it would lead to this calamity, that if all deeds are null and there's no such thing as results of your decisions, then you're going to go through the world with this lack of wisdom, thinking that whatever decisions you make, there is no result that's being experienced. And now you're going to tend to make unwise decisions. It's going to lead to unwholesome results, and this is going to produce nothing but difficulties and struggles in one's life. So by learning the natural law of Kamma, you can get to the point where you understand that there is a cause and effect, or action and results. And now you can cultivate wisdom about this natural law and make real improvements to your life. This is the beautiful thing about this natural law of Kamma, is that you can actually improve your life through learning and practicing and developing the wisdom of it. But if there is no Kamma and you just think all deeds are null and void, meaning that, hey, I can just do anything in the world that I like and nothing is going to happen to me as a result of that, this would be very unwise and it would cause much calamity in your life. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see this isn't true, and then you can be able to see the results for yourself. That yes, there is this cause and effect or action and result in the world. So do you guys have any questions on this particular chapter? No questions? Okay, let's see what the next one is. Let's see here. Okay, maybe we'll end on this one. Is there someone that would like to read this one? A very short one. Yeah, Drew? Okay, go for it, sir.
Result of karma is threefold. And what is the result of karma? The result of karma, I say, is threefold, to be experienced in this very life, or in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. This is called the result of karma. This, monks, is called action's fruit.
Okay, so here what the Buddha is saying is that you can't run and hide from your Kamma, that whatever decisions you make, either wise or unwise, it's going to produce either wholesome or unwholesome results. He teaches you this in other parts of his teachings. This one, he's sharing with you, you can't run and hide from your decisions. And he's talking about experiencing it in this life, the next life, or some subsequent occasion, which would be some life after that. Now, I mentioned to you that none of the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief, including this cycle of rebirth and the fact that you're continually being reborn over and over and over again. You can independently verify that there is a cycle of rebirth and this is what you've been experiencing. You might not have the wisdom of how to do that right now, but as you progress in your journey, you can gain that wisdom to be able to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. In volume 11, chapter 105 of our book series, I have the details in there about how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. There's 17 different things that you can do to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. Right now, there's a lot of people in the world that believe that they only have one life, but you don't have any evidence of that. You haven't independently verified that. But there's plenty of evidence in the world that there is the cycle of rebirth, but you might not be connecting all of that and being able to see the truth about this, because you might have been taught that you only have one life, and that's maybe what you're believing right now. Maybe because you can't remember your past lives at this point in time, you might be believing that you only have one life. But understanding that you have these multiple lives can be helpful for you to be able to understand true reality. And the Buddha taught the cycle of rebirth for a reason, because it's true, but also as you're awakening your mind and you're starting to remove these pollutions out of your mind, you might actually have experiences where you start observing your past lives and have memories of these past lives. And if you didn't understand that that's what it was, it could really shake you up. Like say you were having vivid memories of being murdered, and you know, of course, that wasn't in this life. And maybe they just keep resurfacing over and over and over again in your mind. This could really shake you up if you didn't understand it was your past life memories. So as you start clearing out your mind and eliminating this pollution, you can experience the observation of your past lives and even these 5 realms of existence that the Buddha taught of hell, animal, afflicted spirit, human realm, and heavenly realm. You can even independently verify these too. So what the Buddha is saying here in very short form is that you can't run and hide from the decisions that you make. Whatever decisions you make, you're going to experience those results, either in this life, the next life, or some future life. So what the Buddha teaches you to do is he gives you the wisdom of how to extinguish all your unwholesome Kamma, how to extinguish your unwise decisions. By making wise decisions, you will experience more and more wholesome results in your life. You can think about it like a garden hose, that all through our life, we've been putting mud into our garden hose through making unwise decisions. But now what you'd like to do is hook that garden hose up to a faucet and start putting more and more clean water through your garden hose. Putting clean water into your garden hose is to start making wiser and wiser and wiser decisions. But this garden hose is going to spit mud for a while because you've been putting mud into it. You've been making unwise decisions in the past, and you're going to need to experience the results of that. You can't run and hide from that. So even if you get a big, strong flow of clean water through this garden hose by coming to the temple regularly, by reading books, by meditating, all these kinds of things, you're going to experience some mud coming out of this garden hose. But over time, by putting more and more clean water into the garden hose, eventually you're going to get nothing but clean water coming out of this garden hose. And that's the wholesome Kamma that you'll eventually get to by the time you get to enlightenment, that you've extinguished all your unwholesome Kamma, and now you're only experiencing wholesome Kamma in your day-to-day life. And having this understanding that you can't run and hide from your decisions, this can maybe spark an interest for you to take the natural law of Kamma more seriously, to actually learn it and grow and develop, awaken to this wisdom, so that you're not out there making a bunch of unwise decisions, that you're not continuing to put mud in your garden hose, but instead you're working to clean it out by extinguishing all your unwise decisions by only making wise decisions. But you're not going to be able to just snap your fingers and start making wise decisions. You're going to need this gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress to gradually learn this natural law so that more and more you can start making wiser and wiser decisions. So do you guys have any questions on this one? Let me see if we have anything online here. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. All right, so what I'm going to do then is just in class by just thanking all of you guys for being interested to learn the teachings of the Buddha. If you guys would like to come back and learn more, you're more than welcome to come here. Sundays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, I teach classes, and then I have various courses and retreats throughout the month and throughout the year. They're on the bulletin board over there, and they're also on our website. We have an events calendar that you can see all the events because we have them here, and I also teach from home sometimes. I don't have a live audience there, but I live stream it. So each day at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., I'm teaching classes. So no matter what time zone you're in, you should be able to attend a live class. But if you can't attend the live class, they're all recorded on our YouTube channel, and our Facebook group, on our podcast. So you can definitely learn and grow and develop if you're interested in experiencing more peace and more joy in your mind. And all the classes, all the courses, all the books, all the videos, podcasts, even personal guidance is available to you at no cost. So you're able to learn and grow and develop on this path without any kind of obstacles affecting you. So thank you all for joining, and perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.